Welcome back to Dark Vale, where the shadows weave tales too eerie to forget. Tonight, we're stepping into the quiet, fog-draped town of Ravenwood, tucked away in rural Vermont. It's a place time seems to have abandoned, except for the whispers that linger in an old house on Cedar Row, a crumbling relic the locals call the Gloom. This isn't your average ghost story. It's a descent into something far darker, something that seeps from the walls themselves. So grab a blanket, turn down the lights, and let's venture into the unknown. It all began in the fall of 1978, when the Harrington family, James, Laura, and their two kids, Anna and Tom, rolled into Ravenwood. They'd bought the house on Cedar Row for next to nothing, a sagging two-story structure from the 1800s with warped wood and a roof that groaned in the wind. To them it was a fresh start, a steal they couldn't pass up. But within days, the house made itself known. It started with faint murmurs, soft, indistinct voices that seemed to drift through the air. James chalked it up to the wind whistling through the cracks, and Laura thought it might be the old furnace rattling, but the whispers didn't fade. They grew sharper at night, curling through the walls like a living thing. Laura was the first to feel the weight of it. She'd wake in the dead of night, her name hissed in the darkness, a low, gravelly voice that sent shivers down her spine. She'd stumble out of bed, heart pounding, and check on the kids. Anna and Tom would be fast asleep, undisturbed. She told James, but he brushed it off as exhaustion from the move. That is, until he heard it too. One evening, while patching a leak in the basement, he stopped cold. The walls down there, cold, slick with moss, hummed with voices. Not just whispers now, but words, clear and insistent. "Get out!" The phrase looped, growing louder until he bolted upstairs, his face drained of color. He told Laura they were leaving. She refused. They'd poured their savings into this place, and she wasn't ready to give up. Then the kids started to change. Anna, who was 8, began sketching strange figures, tall, skeletal shapes with hollow eyes, lurking in the corners of her drawings. She'd sit for hours, her crayons scratching out scenes she couldn't explain. Tom, just 5, woke up screaming about the wall people staring at him from the shadows. His little hands would tremble as he pointed at the bedroom walls, swearing they moved. Desperate, the Harringtons called in a priest. Father Michael arrived, sprinkled holy water, and prayed over the house. The whispers stopped for 4 days. Then they roared back, angrier than ever. The walls vibrated with a chorus of voices, snarling words the family couldn't decipher. James couldn't take it anymore. He dug into the house's past, scouring records at the Ravenwood Library. What he uncovered turned his blood to ice. In 1843, the house belonged to Nathaniel Shaw, a widower who'd lost his wife and 3 children to a brutal fever. The townsfolk said he lost his mind, ranting that the walls spoke to him, begging him to keep them close. One stormy night, he bricked up the basement windows and doors, sealing himself inside with the bodies of his family. Weeks later, neighbors broke in and found him dead, slumped against the wall, his fingernails torn from clawing at the stone. The bodies were gone, no trace, no answers. That night, James told Laura they were done. But before they could pack, the whispers turned to screams. The family jolted awake to a nightmare. The walls were bleeding, dark, thick liquid dripping from the cracks, pooling on the floor. Anna was gone from her bed. Tom, sobbing, said he'd seen her walk into the basement, her face blank, her eyes wide and unblinking. James and Laura tore through the house, shouting her name, but she'd vanished. In the basement, they found nothing, except a single handprint, small and perfect, pressed into the stone wall like it had been molded there. The police searched for days, but Anna was never found. The Harringtons fled the next morning, leaving everything behind. The house sat empty, its windows black and lifeless. But the stories didn't end. In 1996, a group of local teens broke in on a dare. only 3 of the 4 came out. The survivors swore the walls screamed their names, and their friend Kyle walked into the basement, entranced, never to return. In 2013, a paranormal crew set up microphones inside. Their recordings captured hours of whispers, names, cries, and one chilling line, "We're still here." Today the gloom looms silently on Cedar Row, its walls quiet to the casual passerby. But if you linger too long, especially after dark, some say you can hear them. The lost voices of Ravenwood trapped forever in the whispering walls. Sleep well, Dark Vale listeners, and if you're ever driving through rural Vermont, maybe skip Cedar Row. Welcome back to Dark Vale, where the darkness hides stories that chill the soul. Tonight we're heading to Black Hollow, a sleepy hamlet nestled in the dense forests of West Virginia. It's a place where the trees grow thick and the nights stretch long, but it's not the woods that keep people away. It's the light, a flickering, lonely glow that wanders the trails after dusk. Locals call it the Lantern Man, and those who've followed it, well, they don't come back to tell the tale. Settle in, dim the lights, and let's walk into the shadows. The story begins in 1982 when Mark Delaney, a 32-year-old mechanic from Charleston, decided to visit his cousin in Black Hollow. It was late October, the air crisp, and the leaves a blaze of red and gold. Mark arrived after dark, his pickup rumbling down the narrow dirt road that cut through the forest. About a mile from town, his truck sputtered and died. Cursing his luck, he grabbed a flashlight and started walking. That's when he saw it, a faint bobbing light in the trees, swaying like a lantern held by an unseen hand. He called out, thinking it was help. No answer came, but the light lingered, drifting deeper into the woods. Mark wasn't the superstitious type, so he followed. The glow stayed just ahead, teasing him through the underbrush. Minutes turned to hours, and the forest grew colder, the trees tighter. His flashlight flickered out, leaving only the lantern's eerie shine to guide him. Then he heard it, a low hum, like a voice stretched thin by the wind. The light stopped, hovering over a clearing. Mark stepped forward and froze. In the glow stood a figure, tall, cloaked in shadow, its face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The lantern dangled from its bony hand, casting a sickly, yellow light. Mark shouted, demanding to know who it was. The figure turned, and for a split second, he saw its eyes, empty sockets, black as coal. Then the light went out. Mark stumbled back to town at dawn, wild-eyed and babbling about the Lantern Man. His cousin called the sheriff, but a search found no tracks, no lantern, nothing. Mark left Black Hollow that day and never returned. But his story spread, and it wasn't the first. Old-timers in town whispered about the Lantern Man going back decades. In 1957, a hunter named Earl Grayson vanished chasing that same light. His rifle turned up a week later, half buried in the mud, but he was gone. In 1974, 2 teens, Lisa and Bobby, snuck into the woods on a dare. Lisa made it back, screaming about a figure with no face. Bobby didn't. The legend ties back to 1891, when a coal miner named Amos Tate disappeared in the forest. Amos was a loner, known for carrying a lantern on his nightly walks home from the mines. One night, he didn't show up. Months later, a search party found his lantern hanging from a tree, still lit, swaying in the wind. His body was never found, but soon after, folks started seeing that glow in the woods. Some say Amos became something else, something cursed to wander, luring others to share his fate. Over the years, the Lantern Man claimed more. In 1999, a hiker named Sarah Wells vanished after telling friends she'd seen a light in the trees. Her camera was found, its last photo showing a blurry figure holding a glowing lantern. In 2015, a trucker swore he saw it standing by the road, motionless, watching him pass. Paranormal investigators have tried to track it, setting up cameras and motion sensors. Most come back empty-handed, but one team in 2020 caught a sound, a faint, warped voice whispering, "Follow me." Today, Black Hollow warns visitors to stay out of the woods after dark. The Lantern Man still roams, his light a beacon in the night. Some say he's searching for his lost soul. Others think he's collecting company for whatever lies beyond the trees. So, Dark Veil listeners, if you're ever near West Virginia and see a glow in the forest, keep walking. The Lantern Man doesn't like to be ignored. Welcome back, where the shadows weave tales too eerie to forget. Tonight, we're traveling to Ashland Pines, a quiet logging town in northern Oregon, surrounded by towering evergreens and a past that refuses to stay buried. At the heart of this story is an antique mirror, its glass cloudy with age, its frame carved with strange, twisting symbols. It's been passed down through generations, and wherever it goes, tragedy follows. Settle in, turn off the lights, and let's peer into the reflection. It started in 1985, when Rachel Evans, a single mother, moved into a weathered cabin on the edge of Ashland Pines. She'd inherited the place from her late uncle, along with a few dusty heirlooms, including the mirror. It was tall, nearly 6 feet, with a heavy oak frame that looked older than the town itself. Rachel hung it in the living room, thinking it added charm. But that first night, she woke to a sound. A faint tapping, like fingernails on glass. She checked the house, found nothing, and blamed the wind. The next night, it happened again, louder, coming from the mirror. Rachel tried to ignore it, but the strangeness grew. She'd catch glimpses in the glass, shadows moving where no one stood, faces that weren't hers staring back. One morning, her 9-year-old son, Caleb, said he saw a woman in the mirror, pale and smiling, beckoning him closer. Rachel laughed it off as a kid's imagination, but unease crept in. Then the dream started. Every night she'd see the same figure, a woman in a tattered dress, her eyes black voids, whispering Rachel's name. The voice was soft, almost sweet, but it left her trembling. Weeks passed, and the mirror became an obsession. Rachel would sit in front of it for hours, staring into its depths. She swore she saw scenes playing out, fires, floods, people screaming, none of it real, yet vivid enough to feel. Caleb grew quiet, spending his days sketching the woman from his dreams. One night, Rachel caught him pressing his hands to the glass, whispering back to it. She yanked him away, and that's when she saw it, a crack snaking across the mirror, though no one had touched it. Desperate, Rachel dug into her uncle's old journals stashed in the attic. She found an entry from 1972. "The mirror's cursed. It took Ellen. I should have burned it." Digging deeper, she traced its history to 1879, when a settler named Margaret Voss brought it to Ashland Pines. Margaret was a recluse, feared by the townsfolk. Rumors said she'd talked to the mirror, claiming it showed her the future. One winter, her cabin burned down, killing her and her daughter. The mirror survived, unscathed, and passed to the next owner. Each family that owned it met ruin, accidents, disappearances, madness. Rachel decided to get rid of it. She hauled the mirror to the woods and smashed it with an axe. The glass shattered, but the pieces wouldn't stay broken. They reformed overnight, whole again, sitting in her living room by morning. That night the tapping turned to pounding, and the woman's whispers became screams. Caleb went missing. Rachel found his shoes by the mirror, and in its reflection she saw him, standing beside the woman, his face blank, his eyes black. She clawed at the glass, sobbing, but it was too late. The cabin sat empty after that. In 1993, a hiker found the mirror leaning against a tree, miles from town, its surface flawless. He took it home, and within months, his family vanished. In 2018, a thrift store in Portland sold it to a young couple. They disappeared, but the mirror turned up in their garage, untouched. Locals say it's still out there waiting for its next owner. Some claim to hear tapping in the woods at night or see a woman's face in old glass. So if you're ever in Ashland Pines and spot an antique mirror, don't look too long. Reflections can lie. Tonight, we're venturing to Willow Bend, a small farming community in southern Indiana, where the corn grows tall and the silence hides something sinister. Beyond the town lies a stretch of fields, acres of swaying stalks that locals avoid after dusk. They call them the Screaming Fields, and for good reason. The air there hums with voices no one can explain, cries that rise from the earth itself. Grab a blanket, dim the lights, and let's walk into the unknown. The story begins in the summer of 1990, when the Bennett family, Paul, Karen, and their 12-year-old son, Ethan, moved to Willow Bend. They'd inherited a farmhouse from Paul's uncle, a sprawling property bordered by those fields. It was a hot July, the kind where the heat shimmers off the ground, and the Bennetts were eager to settle in. The house was old but sturdy, with creaking floors and a wide porch overlooking the corn. At first, everything seemed perfect. Then the scream started. It was subtle at first, a faint wail carried on the evening breeze, easy to mistake for a distant animal or the wind rustling the stalks. Paul and Karen brushed it off, but Ethan was different. He'd stand on the porch at night staring into the fields, his brow furrowed. One evening, he told his parents he heard voices, people crying, calling for help. Karen laughed, thinking it was a kid's imagination and running wild. But the next night, she heard it too, a sharp, desperate scream that cut through the stillness. It wasn't an animal. It was human. Paul decided to check it out. He grabbed a flashlight and waded into the corn, the stalks towering over him like a living wall. The screams grew louder as he pushed deeper, a chorus of anguish that seemed to come from everywhere. He shouted into the dark, asking who was there, but no one answered. The voices just kept going, men, women, children, all pleading, sobbing, shrieking. Then, just as suddenly, they stopped. Paul stumbled back to the house, his shirt soaked with sweat, his hands trembling. He told Karen it felt like the fields were alive. After that, the Bennetts couldn't ignore it. The screams came every night, always after sunset, loudest near the edge of the property. Ethan started having nightmares, waking up in tears, saying he saw people in the corn, pale figures with hollow eyes, reaching for him. Karen found him sleepwalking once, halfway into the fields, his bare feet caked with dirt. She pulled him back, but he kept muttering, "They want me to stay." The family stopped going outside after dark, locking the doors, drawing the curtains. But the screams seeped through the walls, relentless. Paul dug into the town's history, asking around at the local diner. Most folks clammed up, but an old farmer, Hank Grayson, spilled the beans over a cup of coffee. He said the fields had been cursed since 1873, when a harvest went bad. A group of settlers, some 30 men, women, and kids, worked those lands for a wealthy landowner named Silas Reed. That fall, a drought hit, and the crops failed. Desperate, Silas locked the workers in a barn, promising food when the fields recovered. They starved instead. When the townsfolk found out, they burned the barn with Silas inside, but the workers were already gone, buried in shallow graves beneath the fields. Ever since, people heard screams, especially in summer. The Bennetts didn't believe in curses, but the story gnawed at them. One night, Ethan went missing. Paul and Karen woke to silence, no screams, just an eerie stillness. They found his window open, his shoes gone. Frantic, they searched the fields, calling his name. Deep in the corn they found him, standing motionless, staring at the ground. Around him the stalks were bent inward, forming a circle, and the dirt was freshly turned, like something had clawed its way up. Ethan wouldn't speak, wouldn't move. When they dragged him home, he whispered, "They're still hungry." The next day, the Bennetts fled Willow Bend, leaving the house to rot. But the fields didn't stay quiet. In 1998, a surveyor mapping the land heard screams so loud he dropped his gear and ran. His recorder caught hours of voices, names, pleas, and a chilling chant, "Feed us!" In 2014, a group of teens dared each other to camp there. Two came back babbling about hands bursting from the soil, dragging their friend under. The police found nothing but trampled corn. Today, the screaming fields of Willow Bend stand untouched, the corn growing wild. Farmers won't plow them, and kids steer clear. If you pass by on a summer night, you might hear it, the cries of the lost, rising from the earth, hungry for company. Sleep tight and maybe think twice before cutting through Indiana's back roads. Tonight we're stepping into the quiet streets of Eldridge, a fading town in eastern Tennessee, where old houses sag under the weight of their secrets. Among them stands a narrow three-story relic on Pine Street, its windows boarded, its paint peeling like dead skin. Locals call it the Dollmaker's house, and no one's lived there since 1975, not officially anyway. But the lights flicker on some nights, and the dolls, they don't stay still. Settle in, turn off the lights, and let's open the door to this nightmare. The story starts in 1989, when Lisa Carter, a 28-year-old journalist from Knoxville, came to Eldridge chasing a lead. She'd heard rumors about the house, a place tied to vanishings, whispers of a craftsman who made dolls too lifelike to be normal. Lisa was working on a piece about urban legends, and the Dollmaker's house was too good to pass up. She arrived on a gray October afternoon, her tape recorder ready, her camera slung over her shoulder. The house loomed over the street, its warped porch creaking under her boots as she pried the front door open. Inside, dust hung thick in the air, and the smell of mildew stung her nose. Then she saw them, dozens of dolls, perched on shelves, chairs, even the stairs, their glass eyes glinting in the dim light. Lisa started recording, narrating the scene. Porcelain faces, stitched smiles, tiny hands posed in eerie stillness. Some were dressed in faded lace, others in patched overalls, all staring straight ahead. She laughed into the mic, calling it creepy but harmless, until one of the dolls blinked. She froze, her breath catching. It was a small one, blonde curls framing a pale face, sitting on a rocking chair. She swore its eyes had moved. Shaking it off as a trick of the light, she kept exploring. The ground floor was a maze of clutter, old tools, spools of thread, jars of buttons. But the real strangeness waited upstairs. On the second floor she found a workshop, a long table stretched across the room, littered with doll parts. Arms, legs, heads with empty sockets. A sewing machine sat in the corner, its needle still threaded, as if someone had just stepped away. Lisa's recorder caught her muttering about the detail. The dolls weren't just toys, they were perfect, down to the veins painted on their hands. Then she heard it, a soft giggle, high and childlike, echoing from the third floor. Her heart pounded, but curiosity won. She climbed the stairs, each step groaning under her weight. The top floor was a nursery, cribs, rocking horses, and more dolls, hundreds of them, lining the walls. In the center stood a full-sized figure, dressed in a black apron, its face a blank porcelain mask. Lisa assumed it was a mannequin until it turned its head. She screamed, dropping her camera, and bolted for the stairs. The giggle followed, joined by others, tiny, tinkling laughs from every corner. She tripped halfway down, her recorder tumbling into the dark. When she reached the front door, it wouldn't budge. The dolls were moving now. She could hear their little feet pattering across the floor, their glass eyes clicking as they turned. Panicked, Lisa smashed a window and crawled out, cutting her arms on the glass. She ran to her car, drove straight to Knoxville, and never went back. Her editor got the story from her shaky voice memos, hours of audio, including the giggles and a low, raspy whisper saying, "Stay and play." The photos she'd taken showed dolls in poses she didn't remember, some reaching out, others with heads tilted toward her. She quit journalism after that. The house's history traces back to 1942 when a man named Henry Voss moved in. Henry was a dollmaker, a quiet widower who'd lost his daughter, Clara, to illness. He started crafting dolls in her likeness, each one more detailed than the last. Neighbors said he talked to them, called them his children. In 1975, he vanished. No note, no trace, just his workshop left behind. Since then, people have seen lights in the windows, heard laughter, even spotted dolls in the yard that disappear by morning. In 1996, a group of teens broke in. Only one, a girl named Amy, came out, sobbing about dolls that chased her, their mouths opening to scream. In 2017, a paranormal team set up cameras inside. The footage showed dolls shifting positions, one climbing a shelf, its head turning to face the lens. The team fled when the lights went out and the giggling started. Today, the Dollmaker's house stands empty, its dolls waiting. If you're ever in Eldridge, steer clear of Pine Street, unless you want to play. Tonight, we're driving down Route 13, a lonely stretch of asphalt, cutting through the pine forests of northern Maine. It's a road most avoid, not because of potholes or sharp turns, but because of what lingers in the dark, shapes that flicker in your headlights, figures that don't belong. Locals call them the shadows of Route 13, and they've been claiming drivers for decades. Buckle up, turn off the lights, and let's take this haunted ride. The story begins in the winter of 1992, when Jake Sullivan, a 35-year-old trucker from Bangor, took a late-night haul down Route 13. It was a clear December night, the kind where the cold bites through your coat and the stars burn bright. Jake was used to long runs, his rig loaded with lumber, the radio crackling with static. About 20 miles in, the signal died, leaving only silence. Then his headlights caught something, a tall, thin figure standing in the middle of the road. He slammed the brakes, tires screeching, but when he looked again, it was gone. Shaking his head, he chalked it up to fatigue and kept driving. But the shadows didn't let him go. A mile later, they were back, dark silhouettes darting across the road too fast to be human. Jake's heart raced as he gripped the wheel, his breath fogging the cab. They weren't animals. They moved upright, their edges blurry, like smoke caught in the wind. He floored it, pushing the truck to its limit, but the shadows kept pace, weaving through the trees on either side. Then he heard it, a low, guttural hum, rising from the road itself, vibrating through the steel. His dashboard flickered, the engine sputtered, and the shadows closed in. Jake made it to a gas station at the edge of Route 13, pale and trembling. He told the clerk, a grizzled old man named Roy, about the figures. Roy didn't blink, just poured him coffee and said, "You're lucky you stopped." He explained that Route 13 had been cursed since the 1950s, when a bus carrying loggers crashed in a blizzard. All 27 aboard died, their bodies never found, swallowed by the snow. Since then, drivers reported seeing shadows, tall, faceless things that lured rigs off the road or chased them into the night. Jake didn't believe in ghosts, but he couldn't shake what he'd seen. He took a different route home, swearing never to touch Route 13 again. Word spread, and others came forward. In 1978, a woman named Ellen Price vanished after calling her husband from a payphone on the route, saying, "Something's following me." Her car turned up a week later, empty, the keys still in the ignition. In 1985, a teen, Danny Brooks, raced his motorcycle down the road on a dare. His friends found the bike in a ditch, handlebars twisted, but no sign of Danny. The shadows weren't just sightings, they took people. In 2001, a family of 4, Mark and Linda Hayes, with their kids, Sam and Grace, drove Route 13 on vacation. They never reached their cabin. Searchers found their SUV parked neatly on the shoulder, doors locked, engine cold. Inside were their bags, a half-eaten sandwich, and a camcorder. The tape showed Mark filming the kids in the back seat, laughing, until Grace pointed out the window and screamed. The camera swung to the glass. Dozens of shadows stood in the trees, motionless, their heads tilted. The footage cut to static. Locals avoid the road after dark, but some can't resist the challenge. In 2016, a YouTuber named Chris Vega live-streamed a drive down Route 13. His viewers watched as he joked about the legend, his headlights slicing through the pines. 30 minutes in, the shadows appeared, flickering shapes crossing the road. Chris laughed nervously, then gasped as his car jolted. The stream froze on his wide-eyed face, the hum filling the audio. His wrecked car was found the next day, but Chris was gone. The footage went viral, though skeptics called it a hoax. The history of Route 13 goes deeper. In 1932, a hermit named Amos Crane lived in a shack off the road. He warned travelers about the Watchers, claiming they were spirits of the forest, angry at the loggers who'd stripped the land. One night, his shack burned down and he disappeared. Some say the shadows took him too. Today, Route 13 remains open, its pavement cracked and lonely. Truckers still hear the hum, see the shapes, and feel the cold grip of something watching. So, if you're ever in Maine and tempted by a shortcut, stick to the highway. The shadows of Route 13 don't let go easily. Tonight, we're heading to Stillwater, a drowsy town in the swamps of Louisiana, where the air hangs heavy with moss and mystery. At the end of a muddy lane stands an old shack, its wood blackened by time, its single red door a stark slash against the decay. Locals say it's been there forever, and no one who's gone through that door has come back unchanged, if they come back at all. Grab a blanket, kill the lights, and let's step across the threshold. The story begins in 1993, when Claire Dubois, a 29-year-old photographer from New Orleans, drove to Stillwater, chasing a tip. She'd heard whispers of the Red Door, a local legend about a shack that appeared and vanished in the bayou, tied to strange disappearances. Claire was working on a book about Southern folklore, and this was too juicy to ignore. She arrived at dusk, the sky bruised purple, her jeep bouncing down the rutted path. The shack was real enough, sagging under cypress trees, its red door chipped but vivid like fresh blood against the rot. She snapped a few photos, the flash glinting off the paint, and knocked. No answer. The air felt thick, the crickets silent. Curiosity pulled her in. The door creaked open on rusted hinges, revealing a single room, bare, damp, with a dirt floor and a lone chair in the center. Claire stepped inside, her boots sinking into the muck. The walls were scratched with marks, claw-like gouges, some fresh, some crusted with age. She started recording, her voice steady as she described the eerie stillness. Then the door slammed shut behind her. She spun around, tugging at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. That's when she heard it, a low, wet breathing, like something drowning in the dark. It came from the chair. Claire's flashlight swept the room, landing on the chair, empty, but now rocking slightly, as if someone had just stood up. Her recorder caught her gasp, then a whisper, not hers, saying, "Look closer." She froze, her pulse hammering. The breathing grew louder, circling her, and the gouges on the wall seemed to shift, deepening as she watched. Panic set in. She pounded on the door, screaming for help, but the swamp swallowed her voice. Then the floor moved, soft like it was breathing too, and something cold brushed her ankle. She stumbled back, dropping her flashlight, and the room went black. Hours later, a fisherman found her jeep, still parked by the shack, but Claire was gone. Her camera lay in the mud, its last photo showing the red door ajar, a blurry shape standing just inside, tall, hunched, its eyes two white pinpricks. Her recorder turned up a week later, half sunk in the bayou, with 3 hours of audio, her initial notes, the breathing, the whisper, and then screams, hers and others, overlapping in a chorus of terror. The tape ended with a gurgling laugh. The Red Doors legend goes back to 1881, when a trapper named Remy LeBlanc built the shack. Remy was a recluse, rumored to dabble in dark rituals after losing his family to fever. One night, he vanished, leaving the door painted red, some say with blood. Since then, the shack's been a magnet for the curious and the lost. In 1964, a hunter named Tom Boudreau went in and came out mute, his hair white, claw marks on his arms. In 1980, two kids dared each other to knock. One, Joey, disappeared. The other, Marie, said he'd been pulled inside by wet hands. In 2005, a paranormal team investigated. They set up cameras outside the shack, capturing the door swinging open on its own. One researcher, Ben Tate, went in. The footage showed him stepping through, then static. 5 minutes later, he stumbled out, babbling about a thing with no face. His skin was clammy, his fingernails torn off. The team's audio picked up wet footsteps and a voice saying, "Mine now." Ben quit the group and moved away. Today, the shack still stands in Stillwater, its red door a warning in the swamp. Locals say it moves sometimes, appearing in different spots along the bayou, always waiting. If you hear breathing in the night or see that red slash through the trees, turn back. Whatever's behind the door doesn't let go. Tonight we're traveling to Coldridge, a forgotten mining town in the mountains of Colorado, where the rails rust and the past echoes louder than the wind. Once a train ran through these peaks, hauling coal and dreams until it didn't. They call it the vanishing train of Coldridge, a ghost that rolls through the fog, taking more than it leaves. Settle in, dim the lights, and let's board this spectral ride. The story starts in 1988, when Ryan Keller, a 32-year-old hiker from Denver, set out to explore the old Coldridge rail line. It was early November, the air sharp with frost, the mountains cloaked in mist. Ryan was a history buff, drawn to the abandoned tracks that snaked through the cliffs, relics of a boomtown gone bust. He'd read about the train, a coal hauler that disappeared in 1903, crew and all, never found despite years of searches. Armed with a map and a flashlight, he trekked to where the line curved into a narrow pass. That's when he heard it, a distant whistle, shrill and mournful, cutting through the silence. Ryan figured it was his imagination until the ground trembled. A rumble grew, the sound of steel on steel, and from the fog emerged a train. It was old, its black locomotive scarred with rust, its cars swaying as if barely holding together. The whistle screamed again, and Ryan stood rooted, watching it barrel toward him. He dove off the tracks just in time, the wind from its passing tugging at his coat. But as he scrambled up, the train was gone. No smoke, no sound, just the empty rails. His flashlight caught something in the dirt, fresh coal dust, still warm. Shaken, Ryan hiked back to Coldridge and told the locals at a diner. Most laughed, but an old miner, Ed Grayson, leaned in close. He said the train had been haunting the pass since 1903, when it left Coldridge with 20 crewmen and a load of coal, bound for Denver. A storm hit, the tracks iced over, and it never arrived. Search parties found nothing, no wreckage, no bodies, just a lantern flickering on the rails. Since then, people saw it, always in fog, always at night, rolling through like it was still on schedule. Ryan didn't buy ghost stories, but he couldn't explain the coal dust. He went back the next day, setting up a tape recorder near the pass. That night, the whistle blew again. The tape caught it, 3 long blasts, then the clatter of wheels and voices, faint, garbled, calling out orders like a crew in panic. The train passed, invisible this time, but Ryan felt the ground shake and smelled coal smoke. He played the tape for Ed, who nodded grimly. "They're still running," he said, "and they don't like being late." The vanishings tied to the train weren't just legend. In 1959, A surveyor named Carl Holt disappeared mapping the old line. His tools were found scattered near the tracks, his last log entry reading, "Heard a whistle, checking it out." In 1976, a pair of teens, Mike and Jenny, camped by the pass. Jenny woke to the train's rumble, saw Mike walk toward it, mesmerized. She screamed as he vanished into the fog, his jacket turned up miles away singed. In 2002, a photographer, Sarah Lane, snapped a blurry shot of the train before her car broke down nearby. She was gone by morning, her camera left behind with that one image. In 2019, a storm chaser named Alex Reed chased the legend during a blizzard. He live-streamed from the pass, his camera catching the whistle and a faint outline in the snow. A train shimmering like a mirage. His feed cut out as he yelled, "It's stopping!" Searchers found his gear buried in a drift, but no Alex. The footage showed shadows in the train's windows, figures leaning out, watching. The vanishing train's roots go back to that 1903 storm, but some say it's older. Miners in the 1890s spoke of a devil's engine, a train that appeared during blizzards, luring workers to their deaths. Today the Coldridge rails are abandoned, but the whistle still echoes through the peaks. Hikers hear it, feel the rumble, see coal dust on untouched snow. If you're ever in Colorado's mountains and the fog rolls in, don't follow the sound. The vanishing train of Coldridge is always looking for passengers. Tonight, we're wandering into Dust Hollow, a desolate patch of scrubland in western Texas, where the earth cracks dry and the wind howls through forgotten places. At the heart of this wasteland stands the bone tree, a gnarled, leafless oak, its branches hung with strange, pale ornaments that clatter in the breeze. Locals say it's no natural thing, that it feeds on more than soil. Grab a blanket, turn off the lights, and let's approach this twisted relic. The story begins in 1995, when Travis Reed, a 27-year-old drifter from Lubbock, rolled into Dust Hollow on his motorcycle. It was a blistering August day, the sun baking the ground, and Travis was low on gas. He'd heard rumors about the bone tree, a freak of nature folks avoided, said to be cursed. He found it easily enough, a mile off the highway, its crooked silhouette stark against the horizon. Up close, it was worse. The ornaments weren't wood or stone, they were bones, small and brittle, dangling from twine like wind chimes. Some looked animal, others less so. Travis smirked, figuring it was a prank, and snapped a photo. That night he camped nearby, the tree looming in the dark. Around midnight he woke to a sound, a dry rhythmic clacking like the bones were tapping together. He grabbed his flashlight, its beam catching the tree. The branches were swaying, though the air was still, and the bones rattled louder, a chorus of clicks and scrapes. Then he saw it, a shadow beneath the tree, hunched and thin, moving like it was digging. Travis called out, his voice cracking, but the figure didn't turn. Instead, the ground trembled, and a low moan rose from the dirt, vibrating through his boots. He bolted to his bike and peeled out, the clacking fading behind him. Travis told his story at a bar in Lubbock, hands shaking as he downed a beer. Most laughed, but an old rancher, Cal Withers, pulled him aside. Cal said the bone tree had been there since the 1880s, when a drought killed half the county. A hermit named Ezra Cole lived nearby, claiming the tree spoke to him, demanding offerings. One day, Ezra vanished, and folks found bones hanging from the branches, some his, some not. Since then, it's been a black spot. In 1967, a hunter disappeared near it, his rifle turned up strung in the tree, barrel bent. In 1982, a kid, Bobby Tate, ran off to see it. They found his shoes under the roots, nothing else. The tree doesn't just sit there, it takes. In 2003, a college student, Mia Alvarez, studied it for a biology project. She camped out, taking soil samples, noting the bones weren't weathered like they should be. That night, her journal entry stopped mid-sentence. "The ground's moving." Her tent was found shredded, her gear scattered, and a new bone hung from the tree, still wet with blood. In 2015, a storm chaser recorded audio near it during a dust storm. Amid the wind, there were moans, dozens of voices pleading, then a sharp crack, like a branch snapping. His truck was found a mile away, empty. Locals say the tree grows taller each year, its roots deeper, fed by something beneath. In 2020, a drone flew over it, capturing footage of the branches twisting, reaching up like claws. The pilot, Jake Morse, swore he saw a figure under it, piling bones. The video cut out when the drone crashed, but the last frame showed the tree shaking, dust swirling around it. No one's retrieved it since. The bone tree's origins are murky. Some tie it to Ezra's madness, others to older, darker things buried in Texas soil. Today, Dust Hollow is a no-man's land, the bone tree its silent sentinel. Travelers hear the clacking from the highway, see shapes in the dust. If you're ever in West Texas and spot a lone oak strung with bones, keep driving. The bone tree doesn't like visitors who leave. Welcome back, where the shadows weave tales too eerie to forget. Tonight we're heading to Millstone, a fading town in the heart of Kansas, where the plains stretch endless and the wind carries secrets. At the edge of this nowhere place lies an old well, dry, crumbling, and shunned by locals for generations. It's not just a relic, it's a doorway to something no one can explain. Grab a blanket, kill the lights, and let's descend into the mystery. The story kicks off in 1987 when the Harper family, Tom, Diane, and their teenage daughter Kelly, moved to Millstone. They'd bought a cheap plot of land, a fixer-upper farmhouse with a barn, and that well out back. It was overgrown with weeds, its stones cracked and mossy, a rusty bucket dangling from a rotted rope. Tom figured it was just an eyesore, something to fill in later. But Kelly was drawn to it. She'd sit by the well for hours, sketching its jagged outline, saying it felt alive. Her parents thought it was a phase until the noises started. It began with a low hum, faint enough to dismiss as the wind across the plains. But night after night it grew louder, a deep, resonant drone that seemed to rise from the well itself. Diane swore she heard whispers mixed in, words she couldn't catch, like a conversation just below the surface. One evening, she caught Kelly leaning over the edge, staring down into the blackness. When Diane asked what she was doing, Kelly said, "They're calling me." Her voice was flat, her eyes distant. Diane dragged her inside, locking the doors. But the humming didn't stop. Things escalated fast. Tom woke one night to find Kelly gone. He grabbed a flashlight and ran to the well. There she was, perched on the rim, her legs dangling over the drop. He shouted her name, but she didn't flinch, just turned and smiled, a strange, empty grin. He pulled her back, and as he did, something echoed up from the depths, a guttural wail, not human, not animal, but alive. The next day, Kelly wouldn't talk about it. She just drew page after page of dark, spiraling shapes, muttering about the voices below. Tom decided to investigate. He borrowed a ladder from a neighbor and climbed down. The well was deeper than it looked, 30 feet of rough stone walls, slick with dampness, ending in a muddy floor. He found carvings etched into the rock, crude symbols, circles within circles, and what looked like faces with hollow eyes. His flashlight caught something else, a small rusted box half buried in the muck. Inside were bones, tiny, fragile, like a child's fingers, and a scrap of paper with faded ink. They wait. He climbed out, shaken, and told Diane they were leaving. She agreed, but that night the well wouldn't let them go. The humming turned to screams, high-pitched, piercing, rattling the windows. Kelly vanished again. This time they found her in the barn, covered in mud, clawing at the floor. She said she'd been down the well, that they pulled her in. Her hands were bleeding, her nails torn, but the well was still 30 feet deep. No way she'd climbed out alone. The Harpers packed their car at dawn, but as they drove off, Tom glanced back. The well's bucket was swinging, slow and deliberate, like someone had tugged the rope. They never returned, but the well's story didn't end. In 1994, a drifter named Pete Callahan camped near Millstone. Locals found his gear by the well, his tent, his boots, even his wallet, but no Pete. A Polaroid in his bag showed him standing by the well, grinning, with a faint shadow behind him that didn't match his own. In 2008, a storm chaser recorded audio near the site during a tornado watch. Amid the wind, there it was, a chorus of wails rising from the ground. He swore it wasn't natural. The well's history goes back to 1862, when Millstone was a pioneer outpost. A settler family, the Graysons, dug it, hoping for water. Instead, they vanished. Parents, kids, all gone, overnight. The townsfolk filled it in, but it kept reopening, the stones pushed aside. By 1900, it was abandoned, marked on maps as cursed. In 1971, a boy named Timmy Reed fell in and was pulled out screaming about hands in the dark. He never spoke again. Today, the forgotten well of Millstone stands alone, its bucket swaying in the wind. If you hear a hum or see the ground crack, don't look down. What's waiting doesn't climb out. It pulls you in. And there you have it, 10 tales from the edges of the unknown, where the darkness whispers and the shadows hold their breath. From the whispering walls of Ravenwood to the screaming fields of Willow Bend, we've walked through haunted houses, cursed roads, and places where the lost still linger. These stories are more than just chills. They're a glimpse into the things that wait beyond the light. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Dark Vale. If these tales sent shivers down your spine or kept you up past midnight, hit that subscribe button. There's more darkness ahead, and we'd hate for you to miss it. Leave a comment with your favorite story, share these shadows with your friends, and keep your eyes open. The world's full of mysteries, and we're just getting started. Sleep tight, if you can.